Welcome everyone to the September 19th meeting of the Development Authority of the City of Alpharetta. It looks like we have 5 of our 7 here with John Goss and Maureen Smith absent tonight. We don't have anything to vote on tonight, so we're not in need of a quorum. But to get started, we'll go with the statement of purpose, which is the Development Authority of Alpharetta is granted the powers and jurisdiction through the State of Georgia General Assembly and a resolution adopted by the Alpharetta City Council on September 3rd, 1996. The function of this authority is to promote the public good and general welfare, trade, commerce, industry, general tax base, and the employment opportunities available in the city of Alpharetta. So first thing on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of August 20th. Did anyone have any comments or concerns?
I move to approve the minutes from the August 20th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Tap on your, look on your microphone. Oh, very good.
So we're all there except for you. Start raising again.
Very good. And the next item on the agenda is the presentation of the Windward Parkway and Highway 9 Livable Centers Initiative Strategic Study Update with the City of Milton.
There we go. Can't see it. Okay. So this is part of the Windward LCI. It was actually a year and a half ago we applied for Windward LCI funding and a grant from the Atlanta Regional Commission, which we were not successful, but we were very happy that the CID stepped in as well as the City of Milton and said, well, let's just break this up in thirds and go forward with paying. So really excited about some of the results that we're already seeing. And we wanted to make sure that we got the Development Authority's feedback because, of course, you're going to see a lot of different projects. You're going to be looking at possible grants that we put together in the next couple of months. So I think this will give you the background that you need to make some really solid, good decisions. And so we're working with MKSK, Darren Meyer, who's going to be giving the presentation. And we've worked with him on several other projects in the past. The North Point, several projects at North Point. They're very successful. We also worked with him with the Alpha Link, looking at the Alpha Loop location. So very familiar with the City of Alpharetta, and we're happy that he's working on this. And I'll hand it over.
Thank you. It's good to meet everyone. My name is Darren Meyer with MKSK, and I'm glad to share this update with you today. James, are we all set with the presentation? Okay. As Kathy mentioned, this is a joint effort between the City of Alpharetta, City of Milton, and North Fulton CID. And we have an exhibit that shows the study area with portions of those city limits shown. The dark purple shows the CID properties. And this is an important geography for both communities as well as the CID. Significant concentration of employees in this area. A lot of daily convenience shopping is located particularly along the Highway 9 corridor. And a significant residential population as well. In addition, you have some of the greatest green assets in the community that are located in this district. So we're excited to look at the potential for how we can continue to make this portion of the Alpharetta community and for both communities economically competitive in the future. MKSK, we're a planning and design firm. We're partnered with Development Strategies, who's looking at the real estate market. So I'll do my best to represent the analysis that they've done to date. We have broken this effort into 4 tasks, and this is very similar to a typical planning study in the sense that we started with some foundational data, both hard data analysis and collection, as well as some conversations with the community and with our steering committee, which we've called the core group. The steering committee has folks that have been nominated by the city of Alpharetta, the city of Milton, and the CID. So it's a great group that we've been meeting with. We've had 2 conversations with them to date, 2 more to go. And where we are in the process today is we've largely completed that gathering and analysis of foundational information. We're starting to look at what are some of the ideas, some of the recommendations that build on that. And then we're going to take that back out to our steering committee and to the community and see if we're on the right track. So a couple of the key takeaways that we heard in our first community meeting, the attendance wasn't as robust as we would have liked. So we're going to work on that for our second meeting. The attendees were largely residents that live along the Highway 9 corridor. And so you can see some of the responses that we had were sort of skewed towards that. But among the replies that we heard is that there's great appreciation of the convenience, particularly of some of the retail and shopping along Highway 9. Likewise for the Big Creek Greenway and the trail network that exists. But on the other side of the coin, there's some really legitimate concerns about mobility and how to move comfortably and safely through the district. We had much more robust response to our survey that went out via employers to their employees in the district. We had over 800 replies to that, which gave us some really great insight. We have the full survey, which we can share with you. I'm going to pull out just a few of the takeaways. One is that the vast majority of the respondents that we have are from zip codes that are immediately surrounding the study area, although we did have 41 zip codes represented in the workers who responded to this survey. So quite a catchment that's coming to this district to work. We talked about the working arrangements, and this in some ways roughly parallels what we see in terms of national trends with one slight difference. You can see here that there's about 40% of the respondents are working fully on-site. About 57% have hybrid work where they're partially on-site and partially remote, and a much smaller percentage that are fully remote. Nationally, those first 2 are inverted. So you are seeing much more fully on-site at this point in terms of national data. So the Atlanta metro area as a whole is lagging that to an extent. We also asked the question about improvements to the neighborhood or district or the area surrounding the employment centers with respect to whether improving things like trail connectivity, beautification, enhancing the built environment, looking at additional opportunities for lunch or evening dining and drinks, whether that would move the needle in terms of their desire to be back in the office. And the data was interesting. You can see it's almost 50-50, and you could look at that 2 ways. You could say, well, half the folks are ambivalent about those types of improvements. But if you look at those 800 respondents as a percentage of the larger employment population in this district, there's a really significant number that would potentially be influenced by how the surrounding district is built and developed. So digging into that a little bit, we asked them sort of their midday lunch patterns where they go, and predominantly that takes place within the study area. To a lesser extent, that happens in the evening. You see things like Avalon and downtown Alpharetta being some of the areas that are really strong in terms of that after-work experience. And then we asked them where most attention should be focused with respect to how public investments and how development might take shape in the district. And on the right-hand side of this view, you can see the same responses ranked highest with 1, lowest to 5 from our community meeting. And so you can see for the employees, those mobility options are huge. The trails, the sidewalks, being able to move through the district. Secondly was parks, green space, and trails, and that very closely with what the number 1 response was from our community meeting. So you can see good alignment there. A couple of observations about the study area. This just gives you a general sense of the land use. You can see that Webb Road is somewhat of a dividing line on the Milton side between the residential to the north and the commercial areas to the south. An interesting note, even though this study area is a very small percentage of the city of Milton geographically, nearly a third of their residential population lives in this area. So that was sort of an interesting note. But it is a significant area in terms of employers. You can see that for both Milton and Alpharetta, a significant percentage of the largest employers are located within this area. And of course, that shifts on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, but it does really highlight the importance of this district in terms of capturing such a high percentage of the city's total office inventory. There's some unique natural features as well. You look at the Big Creek Greenway and some of the tributaries, including Camp Creek, to the Greenway, and it creates some amazing natural features. I was out yesterday looking at a few of these sites in these clothes, or these shoes, I should say, which was probably a mistake. But you get into some of the floodway areas and some of these tributary creeks, and one of the kind of interesting, I'll say maybe counterintuitive things is you think about areas like North Point, Windward, some of these single-use office areas or retail areas as being dominated predominantly by asphalt with all of the surface parking that's there. But because of the vintage of these, you know, being in place for 20, 25, 30 plus years, the tree cover is significant. And particularly on some of the lots that have remained undeveloped, either because they're a floodplain or for other reasons, you have really significant trees there and just some beautiful areas. You can get down in some of these areas and not even know that you're in a, you know, an urban type environment. So it's remarkable, and that's an asset that can be leveraged. And related to that, we've looked at park access within this district. The green that you see on this exhibit is not the extent of the parks that we've identified. That's a 10-minute walk shed around these parks. So you can see that particularly the heart of the district is really lacking access to great parks and green space. And then trails are key, particularly when you have a roadway network that is somewhat limited in terms of the density of local roads. It relies on large arterials to carry most of the traffic. The ability to have low stress alternatives, the trail network, is really important for people to be able to move throughout the district. So we'll be looking carefully at what's planned, what maybe should be added to that planned list, and how we make some of those key connections. On the market analysis, I have boiled down 60 plus slides into 4. Because there's quite a bit that was done in this, but I'm going to try and capture some of the highlights here. One of the things that is important, that development strategies, our partner does a great job. We've worked with them on dozens of downtowns and focus area projects, is that they are very keen to point out that just doing the market analysis really doesn't move you forward until you apply the market strategy to that. So when we start to look at some of the data that we're starting to see, we're really considering these 3 things. You know, what is tending here in terms of some of the changes that are happening in the real estate market, particularly with suburban office and redevelopment and repositioning opportunities. You're in the thick of those discussions daily. And then thinking very carefully about placemaking, walkability, connectivity, and how that needs to be a key component of this. So in terms of office, we looked at 2 things. We looked at national trends, and we also did some anonymized mobile phone location data to do some site-specific analysis, which I'll share with you as well. So with respect to office, there's a couple things nationally that are worth noting. One is that when you think about work-from-home patterns, for the 40 years preceding the pandemic, there was a gradual but fairly modest rise in work from home. And then that shot through the roof during the pandemic, where you had almost everybody working from home for a period. And what's interesting isn't just how far that has come down from the pandemic peak, but how far that is up from what it was pre-pandemic. And so the notion is that there's likely a very permanent and structural change in terms of the amount of work from home, even though that may still be, decreasing over time as people are getting back to the office. It's still likely to stay very much above that pre-pandemic level. So you see a couple of downstream effects of that. You see less spending, and certain metro areas have been hit harder than others than that in terms of people working from home. You have different occupations that are impacted differently by that work from home dynamic. So a lot of the industries that are in this study area in terms of business, professional services, finance, tech, info, all those tend to be more likely to be work from home types of occupations than some others. You also have an interesting scenario where you have And this has to do with the mobile phone data that we collected as well. What we have seen is that when workers live closer to their place of employment, they are tending to be on site. And so I'm going to reference some data we pulled here. So we looked in the study area, and nearly 80% of the employees that lived within 2 miles have returned to work. Conversely, those that are 10 plus miles away, only 37% of those employees. So there's a really clear relationship between proximity to these employment centers and the amount of people that are returning to work, which allows you to draw a somewhat, I'll say, easy line between the role of housing and how that can be integrated into a district like this. So we're going to be continuing to keep our eye on office. We've got a great group with input from bodies like this. From our core group, we have a lot of development real estate professionals working with the employers themselves. So we're learning a lot from them and sharing and looking to come up with a good solution there. In terms of retail, there's actually an interesting similar corollary where we looked at the amount of distance between people that are doing their shopping in this district, 2019 pre-COVID compared to 2022, and we had similar numbers to the office there. So with the retail, for those that were 10 plus miles away, you had about 80% of those that were returning to the sort of usage that they had at the retailing environment there, where you had over 96% of those that were living closer within 2 to 5 miles returning. So a little less stark than the office, but still the same sort of story there, that those that are closer to these retailing areas are more likely to use them than those that are farther away. We also want to build on the fact that the hotel and retail, I think as this community knows well, is going to be most successful, or can be most successful, when it is paired with certain types of amenities. So we're really excited about the potential for the trail network, those trailheads, the creation potentially of some additional park space, retail that tends to be more experience-based retail and not necessarily the things that you would have in your traditional mixed-use development. I think there are some opportunities there to really create some strong experiences within the district, and the same could be said for the potential for hospitality. And then lastly, with housing, both Alpharetta and Milton continue to be very desirable places to live. There's going to be continued population growth in the area. I think the ongoing question, the ongoing struggle is, what form does that product of housing take? How much of the housing growth within this market area does the city want to capture? Where should it capture it in terms of that density? But I do think from some of the data that we've talked about and what we've looked at, the transition of this study area of Windward and Highway 9 to incorporate more housing, to become more of a mixed-use district, more of a mixed-use neighborhood, is going to help both in terms of repopulating that commercial office space, helping support that retail, and creating that great sort of walkable environment that's such a draw. So that can tend to sound a little like an echo chamber or a, we say that over and over, but we continue to see the data that points to that and supports that. The last thing I wanted to share with you is the role that the City of Milton, the City of Alpharetta, and the CID may play in this. So we have looked at this in terms of the Windward District experiencing a degree of obsolescence. And that's a word that can have a negative connotation, but it's a very natural part of any community. And if you think of the arc of Alpharetta, for example, you can easily point to the movement of the hotspot, where there's been a lot of investment, a lot of energy from the market. And the other areas relatively see that lack of investment, or in some cases even disinvestment. But those areas that are naturally obsolescing provide that great opportunity to rebuild for the next generation of what community and economic development requires in the area. So it's exciting to have that opportunity. If you look at these two curves between yellow and purple, you can see that oftentimes it can take a little bit of nudge in terms of public investment to start to get that private investment going. And that's what we want to explore in this district. So coming out of this study, what we want to know is, what does the market do well? What will the market likely do on their own within the great sort of regulatory and statutory bumpers that the community puts on that type of development? But what does the market do inefficiently or not do at all? And where do the cities and the public authorities and local government need to step in to sort of get that ball rolling and create that experience that's going to start to move the needle on the perception of this district moving ahead? And so you can see a list here of the types of levers that could be pulled from public authorities. You have a CID, which is great. Everything from helping with the marketing and promotion from an economic development standpoint in the district to looking at the creation of amenities, infrastructure. These are all it's not an exhaustive list, but these are the types of things that we can tackle. And we wanted to focus on several of these, but the one that I'll end with, this is our next to last slide, has to do with a little bit different thought about placemaking. And this is a word that runs the risk of meaning everything and nothing because it gets used so often. But one of the things that we love about placemaking is that if you think about, unless you live by the ocean or by the mountains, a place like Alpharetta, any sense of place that you have there is invariably built up of smaller units. So, you think about the storefront that has like a great holiday display, or the corner store, or that beautiful block, or your city center, Alpharetta. If you look at the size of city center, for example, relative to the entire geography of Alpharetta, think how many people associate Alpharetta with that city center experience and how that becomes the identity of the community. And I think Milton's seen the same thing with their Crabapple district and that nice walkable district that's there. So you can have a very small area that has an outsized impact on how people perceive and identify the district. And we want to apply that thinking here. So usually placemaking, you think about sort of saturating the area with banners and colors and logos that, at every threshold and every point you get, you say, this is the district. And there may be an element of that. But what we want to do is we want to look at these key areas where we can have this focused, clustered, very high quality, unique experience and unique quality of place that does the same type of thing that City Center does and Crabapple does in terms of lifting everyone's impression of the district. And that allows different parts of the district to take shape and evolve and develop over time while still kind of lifting everyone's impression and everyone's use of the district. So we're excited about thinking about that. We're looking at some sites that can happen. And ultimately, the way that that's going to happen is going to be a combination of a public-private partnership, where you have that public space, the amenities, taking advantage of some of those natural features, the trail network, all those elements that the public authorities can help build, and then partnering that with what are those retail experiences, what are those other types of development that are really complementary to that environment, and again, can create that experience that's unique in the district. So that's a little bit of what we're thinking in terms of how we want to approach placemaking in this effort as well. 5 key takeaways here. I'm not going to read these. I think everyone who's familiar with the district, these probably resonate to some degree, and they reflect what we heard through our community engagement, touching on parks and open space, mobility, that authenticity that I just mentioned through placemaking. And then in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, we're starting to take some of what we've learned, start to put some thoughts together about placemaking, looking at specific parcels, geographies, areas, trail and roadway connections, et cetera. And we'll be sharing that out beginning next month with our steering committee. And then as we move into November, we'll share those ideas publicly, get some feedback, see if we're on the right track, and then turn that into some actionable steps that the city and the other partners can take forward. Thank you. So I'd love to hear any thoughts, reactions, questions. Kathy, was there anything that you wanted to touch on?
Do you have any of those draft concepts, maybe to show them one? I know it's early and you're getting comments, but that way they could.
I don't know if I have those on here, actually.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
In terms of, the placemaking and with the project, I guess it's already proposed or approved continuum, will that be strong enough in terms of starting to set that placemaking?
So yes and no. It could. I'll tell you our initial thought on it, and it's fluid, right? This is what we're working through. When we see continuum, you could look at a number of other geographies within this study area where you could see something continuum-esque happening, not a copy and paste, but something that has its own unique character. But because of the way Camp Creek and 400 and these major arterials, you have these sort of bite-sized sub-districts, if you want to think of continuum as that, where you could see a master developer coming in and doing a significant thing like continuum. So I think that is a great model for how some of these could develop. And what we want to do is we want to have a little bit of a hands-off approach there where we're going to help the development community understand what the market potential is with the work that we've done through this, how they can, create some character that complements other developments and doesn't cannibalize them and works within the overall, continuity of the district. But what we really want to focus on are things that the market might not do on its own. So thinking about some of the sites that have some really unique natural features, and then thinking about some of those experiential qualities like some truly destination event space or hospitality or corporate housing that's really different than, an event center in the middle of a 90s office building in the middle of a parking lot, something that has some truly distinct destination character to it to support the hospitality industry, corporate, that's there in terms of corporate events, as well as lifestyle events for the surrounding community. Or it could be things like the food hall example. You see a number of these where you have either sort of incubator space for food and beverage providers, or you get some, great folks that come in, and that's combined with, a natural environment and some recreation, and you can, so those are the types of experiences we want to create that are somewhat related, but slightly different, and we think we want to do those at such a high level of quality that they start to become those points, those bright spots within the Alpharetta community that complement city center, that complement these mixed-use developments, but are different enough and have unique enough experience that they really, create that presence for the district.
When you were talking about the community meetings, we only had 50 people total who showed up. And were you referring that you were going to try it again, or is that the November meeting that you were talking about?
We will have a second community meeting, and I think it's interesting because both city staffs are fantastic. I've loved working with the entire Alpharetta city staff over the years. Milton, we've gotten to know a little better, and they're great. The CID is a great partner. So it was a little bit baffling with all of the social media and networks and everything that we weren't able to capture more for that. So we're learning a little bit what happened there. So we're going to try and correct that with our second public meeting.
So in regards to I assume it was surveys that you sent out to the employers of the area?
Yes, it was online.
Is that something you can replicate for just a regular community? People always say, I never heard of that happening. Why didn't I get to say anything when, of course, there was a meeting for it? But is there any way that we could incorporate that into doing that community-wide?
Yes.
Of either through Facebook, Nextdoor, something that has a link that they can go to kind of look at and kind of express their opinions on it?
Definitely.
I'm just, so many people are just so, rather go to the computer than actually show up in person.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'd probably have to change some of it since this was specifically to employees along the Windward Corridor. What are you walking to? What are you
Right.
going to? So we could make those changes.
Yeah.
I emailed those concept plans if you want
Okay.
to pull one up just to show them. I think it's really good for them to see one of those.
Jack, is he pulling it up over there?
Yes.
Is it guest? James, is it COA guest? Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know some of those are realtors. I just think it would help to show some of the detail that they're working on with the trail systems and.
There we go. Okay.
Jack, is it switching up?
Yep.
Yes. And so that first one.
Yeah, I can just quickly go through two
Yeah.
for both of them. Are we back up?
Oh, you want, okay, you're back up.
Yeah. So we looked at two sites where we talked about this kind of focused placemaking, one west of 400 and one east of 400, because 400 is very much a challenge to cross. So this shows the one west of 400. We looked at a site that's right on an existing lake off of Morris Road. It's by the Verizon complex. And the first thing we looked at was the proximity to some of the existing hotels, including two Alpharetta hotels and the Spring Hill that's in Milton. The notion being that as we start to think about what this site could be in terms of related to hospitality, that, again, low-stress, short walk could be a great asset. The second slide that we looked at, are you able to see the slides as I advance them?
I'll get you back there.
Okay.
We had lost Lance for a second, so. I was trying to get him back and I lost you.
Right, so the second slide shows some of the key connections, and this is intentionally loose. These are early concepts that we've been sharing. You know, extending the main spine through Continuum up north to connect to Morris, and then looking at a couple other key connections from 9 through the Fry site, a connection from the intersection of Morris and Deerfield over. It alleviates some of the highly congested intersections that are there, but also to unlock a lot of the development potential that's in the site. So you can start to see in the next slide how you can develop a much more compact pattern. And this has been a discussion at North Point and any of these other, sort of auto-oriented districts. There's so much developable area there that's consumed with surface parking, or in some cases is completely undeveloped in this district. But the idea in these orange areas, particularly on the lake, is you have a really unique natural feature. I've got some great photos that I shot. If you haven't been out there, that this is, it's a great scenic opportunity. And you can see that this unlocks some of these primary development parcels. It has some really great public amenities that could serve both the emerging neighborhoods and also the corporate community that's there. Looking at the key connections to Continuum and out to 9. And then in the next slide, some of the imagery is sort of small. But this is where these sites, this is not a silver bullet approach. We're not saying there's one aha use on this site that is going to change. It's the combination of these. So thinking about things, the images are small, the lower right, like an urban beach. There's an image from people that are clustered on the Seine in Paris where they put some sand and umbrellas out. There's another in Toronto where you have these views, these scenic opportunities, and you create that opportunity for people to take their shoes off, get out in the sand, sit in a lounger, look out over the lake. You combine that with some green space and park space. Even a little oasis, a man-made island out in the lake. Maybe you rent a paddleboard or take a paddle boat out there. Thinking about the trail network around the lake, instead of just A to B trail network, how do we make a stretch of this a promenade that glows at night? It's got some ambiance. It's a place where you stop and look out. And then all of this is supplemented in terms of public amenities that are sort of on the public-facing side of this site on Morris Road, by things like unique food and beverage opportunities. So maybe you walk up, we've got the Lake and Shake idea there, where if you're at the public park or public beach, you could come up and get a snack, get a drink, get a shake. You have dining opportunity that could serve what we're thinking of as a signature event space. And again, this could be signature corporate retreats or lifestyle events that are there. A green roof on the second floor of this that overlooks the lake. We have the idea of some small nests or pods that could be corporate housing or could be rented for people if they're coming for a wedding. So 400 to 600 foot, like the Wild Rice Retreat up in Duluth has these amazing little housing pods. So it's this combination of event space that's highly unique, the dining and food and beverage to support that, as well as support the public use on a daily basis, the public amenities that make this a great park and public space around a unique natural feature, the connectivity along the trails. So collectively, we see this as being a really strong opportunity for that site. And then the second site is at the, yeah, I just want to make sure I've got the right. Yeah, the second site is sort of sandwiched between Edison and Marconi along Windward Parkway. And again, similarly here, we're looking at the number of employment centers, major employers that can connect to this site. So here you're looking at a 2 to 10 minute walk, which is well within, from our employee survey, what folks said they would be willing to do for lunch or after work. And you can see the number of major employers that could be connected to this site at that distance. This is a great opportunity with the Dryden Road extension to connect over to the redevelopment that's happening along North Point Parkway, as well as the MART facility. And so now you have a great multimodal connection from the new MART facility into the heart of the district through the site, connecting to the Greenway and the larger trail network. You have a few sites that are probably prime for redevelopment. There's been some movement on some of these and discussion on some of these. But the idea for the site in orange, you see in the last slide, is this unique food and beverage destination. We called it Ales to Trails, which is, we're not the first person to call it that. It's just a fun way to think about this site, where up on Windward Parkway, you could have a really unique architectural statement. I mean, truly beautiful, iconic architecture that glows in the evenings. There's a space that you see in the middle there that opens up to the public seating and deck that overlooks this, drops down to one of the tributaries. There's great public open space, beautiful tree canopy there. And so everything from a pedestrian bridge that helps connect some of the surrounding employment centers to this area, you know, a food hall, unique food and beverage experience, iconic architecture. You can see the idea of some nature play there with some of the boulders and the natural slides. And then in both of these, but particularly in this one, thinking about programming and experience. So it's not just the built amenities, but what are we doing in terms of cultivation and foraging, gardening, thinking about expression and artistic experiences, movement, yoga, all those kind of things that can really help with that daytime population or after work that are coming from these surrounding employers, and having not just beautiful amenities to be part of, but some great activities and programs that can support that as well. I don't know, James, is my screen shared? Can I? Yeah, okay. So these are some photos that I took yesterday. This is the site, this is the lake over on Morris. So this is the vacant field that is adjacent to the Verizon site. You can see some of the wildlife there. Beautiful views across the lake. You don't see a single piece of development in these views. It feels very natural. The trail that runs along Morris Road now. There's a turtle sunning himself. These are the views from the site itself, looking back out.
Is
Look
that
at
a
this.
natural lake, or is that spring fed, or is that
It's
a
part of-
detention?
It's part of the larger river network. It's not a natural lake, so it's a natural waterway that's been impounded to create the lake.
Okay.
But I mean, look at this view. I mean, this is really significant experience within the district. And this is this last one is again another view from Morris Road. And then I
how
have
do you
just a
protect-
few that I'll quickly show you because I don't want to.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
In something like that, just in theory, how do you protect that view? I mean, as it becomes a more marketable area, how are you not having so that they're sitting there at their beach looking at 7 office buildings on the other side of the lake?
That's what Alpharetta does well, which is your regulatory tools. So through a public planning process, working with those property owners in the community to put in the right bumpers that you need to preserve those natural assets. So these are some shots from the Edison and Marconi site where we talked about the food hall. Look at the mature trees that are out there. You get down there to the creek. It's a beautiful area. So this is the potential where we want to pair this stuff with, I think is largely unknown, other than a few people that sort of wander down there in terms of the quality of these places, with some really sensitively laid out and designed iconic architecture, beautiful site amenities, beautiful landscape architecture to make these some spectacular sites. Did that cover? Yeah. Other thoughts or questions?
You were talking about, some housing growth because you've got, the 80% going back to work if they're within 2 miles and looking at the housing growth. As part of that, are you also looking at like the existing school capacities, to accommodate that housing growth?
No, we have not looked at that layer. No. I think, at the risk of ducking that question, I think the school system presumably is using the same data that we are in terms of projecting citywide, district-wide growth. So it's a question of how much the city or the district collectively wants to capture and what they can serve. But we're looking at the same notion that it's a very desirable place, and there's a ton of interest in North Fulton and a ton of projected growth, both in terms of employment and households. And where do they go? And the district's going to be struggling with that question as well. But
This is kind of a wild question, so you don't have to have an answer to this, but have they ever thought about a larger draw, not just in the area, but also more of a destination? And the one that came to mind, because I was curious to ask anybody on here, 4 days ago, they announced that Atlanta was getting the new headquarters in the U.S. soccer training facility. And I don't know if they haven't announced where that's going to be. They said in January. But like shooting big for something like that coming to Atlanta with the amount of green space that we have up here, is that ever something that would be feasible for something like Alpharetta? I see Kathy getting up. And I don't know that if it's already kind of decided, everybody secretly knows where that's going. But
tomorrow, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were invited here. No. The problem with that particular ask is for the headquarters, they needed about 120 acres. So we are, mostly built out within Alpharetta. It's hard to find 120 acres together. But then when you go and you try to put buildings together that may be empty or mostly vacant, it makes it very tough, to kind of sell that site unless all of those owners are already together as one marketing it. So that was a larger area of land than we had available. But yes, we do get contacted by the state and they'll ask, they'll tell us in general what they're looking for and the land requirement, proximity to 400. And so we always submit what we have that will meet the criteria.
In regards to both of the sites, what are they zoned? With the owners there, are they, they're limited because there are waterways that have to be protected, so it's not like they can bulldoze everything and throw up some buildings or a subdivision, so there are some restrictions there. So I'm just wondering what kind of pushback or advantages to the landowners there that would want to participate in this.
And it may be something that we look at, recommendations to council for changing the zoning. Very similar to what we did at the North Point corridor. So before we went through the North Point LCI, you couldn't build residential within that, auto-centric district. So we did change our code that you could build and come back and ask for residential. Now, all of this is part of the community unit plan for the Windward Master Plan. So there's already a lot of uses allowed by right along this district, and especially like the one that we just looked at with the food hall, that's already allowed for a restaurant. So what we will do with this information is we'll actually have brochures, ideas together that we will market these areas once it's approved by the council. So we'll make sure that the different developers are aware of it. But it could be that we look at changes to the code in the future.
Just a quick comment. Number one, thank you for the study. This is very encouraging. On a personal note, my office is right at the corner of North Point and Windward and 400 next to Marriott, across from Hilton. I've got 650 agents, real estate agents, that come and go there every day. There's not a soul that walks to lunch or dinner. I bring in, all the folks that deliver food love us because we got food coming there every day. Is there any thought about, and I've tried to even walk over to the Hilton, crossing Windward Parkway takes a lot of courage. I'm just curious if there was a way to slow that traffic down in some form or fashion. They're getting it through that intersection, and I understand there's a lot of traffic there. I'm encouraged by the fact that you've got the trail going behind, looks like behind ADP, kind of hooking back in, and that may be the answer. But it's really tough to get anybody to go to lunch unless they get in their car. And so I would just encourage you to look at that as you're doing. And, you know, I've got another probably, I think I got 35 staff in addition to those agents that are coming and going. And it really would be a great opportunity if we could figure out how to get to somewhere without getting in your car. So
Yeah.
I know you're there, I know you're looking at it. I just want to give you a personal example of
Yeah, that's a great
something I
point.
look at every day. So.
Yeah, crossing Windward and definitely crossing 400, those are obstacles. I think when you happen to be on the same side as some of these, the opportunities for easements, trail connections, you know, that kind of stuff makes it much more feasible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how you get across those at-grade crossings or under where the creek is or other creative solutions, I think those are going to be key to really unlock those.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if we're looking at, as part of this study, if we're looking at other, you know, alternative types of transportation, even shuttles, or is that something that you've looked at? Or I don't know if that's something that people would use in the area if we had that. But that may be something,
That could be, yeah.
it could be another survey to the employees to see if that's something that's offered, would they actually use something like that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and it was very informative and, you know, exciting what we're doing and what you're doing, and, you know, it's great that it's Milton and the CID and Alpharetta together doing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
thank you.
exciting. Thank you. I appreciate your insights.
Thank you. Well, next on the agenda is a brief discussion. I think Charlotte has kind of pulled everything together in terms of considering a change to the day and time of the meeting. And what I think in the past, when I joined the authority, there were a lot of people who had the ability to be retired and had the ability to get places early. And I think we've got a group of people here that all continue to work and, you know, have our own schedules. And I think a few have asked about possibly moving the time, not necessarily the day, but the time, just back, you know, half an hour or so to accommodate the workday. So Charlotte had put out some times, and you know, there's some inability now that all of the authorities are and groups are having their meetings in chambers to be able to vote and make it public. We don't have the ability to just take this and push us back a half an hour on our current day. So do you want to just walk us through what you found, and possibly we can, you know, come to an agreement?
Sure. So the Natural Resource Commission uses this room after us, which is why we can't go any later. So I met with the city clerk and came up with all of the dates and times where this room is available. Those were the times that were circulated or in your packet. After talking with all of you, there are 3 options, and it sounds like there's different preferences from different individuals as to which options, but the 3 available ones are either this, the current time, the 3rd Tuesday from 5 to 7, or moving it to the 2nd Thursday of the month, so Tuesday versus a 2nd Thursday a week earlier from 6 to 8 p.m., or doing the 1st Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. So 3rd Tuesday, 2nd Thursday, or 1st Tuesday. And I had heard preference from a couple of people that they prefer later times, and then from some that just to limit the amount of change that we have before the end of this calendar year, given how schedules are already lined up. I don't know, in order to change the time, I think we would have a vote, but I just want to throw those times out there and allow you all to discuss and determine amongst yourselves what you'd prefer.
Just, up until last year, I believe we had an hour allocated. So it was 5 to 6, and then we kind of agreed to find an alternate day so that we could run a little bit longer if we needed to. So that's why we moved to this day. But so right now we have blocked out 5 to 7. Do we have the ability to go 5:30 to 7 with this? And so not, just shortening our time instead of lengthening it. And if we do have, the occasional month where there's a lot on the agenda, just start early, back to 5 on those days. I'm just wondering if that might be a possibility. But you said they're accustomed to getting in here earlier.
Mr. Chairman,
In our seven.
the Natural Resources Commission, we played around with their schedule a good bit. And they actually begin at 6:30.
Okay.
So we can't push this
Okay, that's
back to 7.
If we did want to do 5:30 to 7 as a planned time, or 5:30 to 7:30 on one of these other days, on the second Thursday of the month or the first Tuesday of the month, that is completely an option. We can do that. It's just the Natural Resource Commission is already starting across the hall before moving over for us.
My only concern about Thursdays are not everybody has something every week, but realistically, if people travel on the weekend, it often starts on a Thursday evening or something, and I think sporadically, we would have more people missing if it was a Thursday than if it's a Tuesday. I know for me, if we go out of town as a family, we often leave on Thursday to kind of get that longer weekend.
So the options here are also to either determine a time and then vote on it now, or to table this and keep the current time and discuss a different time at a later date, if that's something that you would like to do. It is up to you all, or you can vote on a time, but say choose a different date for it to start, that, the current third Tuesday of the month would continue for the next 3 meetings or something like that before changing. So all of those are options.
I would suggest, in following what Sean was just saying, stick to the Tuesday, go with the other Tuesday that's available, keep it like this through the end of the year, and then just, start the new year fresh with the new Tuesday, but later. So 5:30 to 7 or something like that.
We can move it after the beginning of the year. The natural resources people are doing something else after.
No, their time is set. Part of the issue was that the Natural Resource Commission had been meeting at this time for years at 6:30. They had just been meeting in another room as we'd been meeting in 318. So that's still the conflict. But if we wanted to say continue meeting at this time at 5 p.m. On the third Tuesday of the month, like we currently are doing, until January 1st of 2024, we could move to the first Tuesday of the month, if that's what's preferable.
And the only reason I'm thinking that we don't table it and wait is I don't want to lose the opportunity to have that first Tuesday with somebody else choosing that. So that's just my thought on that.
Are you aware if there's, sorry, go ahead.
Just at the same time, that first Tuesday, so it'd still be a 5 to 7? Is that what we're,
The first Tuesday, you could pretty much name your time.
okay.
There are no conflicts currently on that date.
So we could go 6 to, in theory, 8.
I was going to say, because, I mean, some people are saying they can't get here at the 5, so I would hate to say, just move it to another one and still have the same time
Sure.
conflict.
Would 5:30, if we had that and we don't have anybody coming after us, would 5:30 to 7 on the first Tuesday work? Is that enough extra time? And then if we have to go late, there's really nobody coming behind us. Go ahead and start at 5:30, I think, which is what you were saying, instead of pushing all the way back to 6. I don't have a problem, but if for the people that need it later, is 5:30 late enough?
6 is better.
6 is better?
I'm thinking of the spring, my world in the spring, but yeah.
And then let's just block off 6 to 8, and with the expectation that we're not going to go to 8 every week, every month.
And I like the first Tuesday idea because January will be what, like the 4th or something, so I like that. You know where I'm going, James. I'll be wearing baseball stuff by then.
Yeah, that's right.
The first Tuesday in January is the 2nd of January. So I will note that's, if you plan to travel during the holidays, that might be a tight fit. The benefit, well, I was going to say, if we started it earlier, we could do that December one would have been sooner. The current time, our December meeting on the 3rd Tuesday of the month would be December 19th. If we kept the 3rd Tuesday for the first week, or the first month of January, it would be January 16th.
What we can do, if you'd like, just a suggestion, we'll go ahead, we'll lock in that first Tuesday, so you don't have to worry about that, right? And you guys don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight. Then what we can do is take that schedule from, next month forward, look at when holidays fall and whatnot, and come to you with, here's a suggested calendar for the coming year. And then you adopt that calendar, you know exactly what the dates are going to be, even the ones that wouldn't necessarily fall on that first Tuesday.
That would be outstanding.
Wonderful. Then we will do this, and I will bring that information to you all within the next month for us to get settled.
Thank you. Well, that takes care of the new business. So we have 2 updates. We have economic development and tech Alpharetta. So Lance, are you on there, or Charlotte, are you going to give us?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'll try to mute my voice a little bit, but I'm happy to give an update, and Charlotte will share some updates as well. First and foremost, some of the projects we've been working on, you got to hear a little bit of that tonight with the LCI focused on the Windward Corridor. And of course, the technical assistance panel that you all were a funding source for and supportive of. That is slated to go on a council agenda in November now. Originally, it was slated for the September 25th agenda. However, due to some scheduling logistics, that's been decided to move to the November agenda. But in the September 25th agenda, however, we are having the Economic Development Strategic Plan, that final deliverable, that report. The consultant is coming down from DC to present that to the City Council. And we would love to extend the invite for the Development Authority to be present if they so choose. That will be on the 25th, so coming up this next week. Of course, the Development Authority was a partial funding source for this plan when it was first put into action back in late 2019, early 2020. So a lot of good stuff in there. I know several of you have served on a steering committee capacity with this study and or have been interviewed by the consultant. So looking forward to those deliverables to be presented by council in the hopes that the City Council will adopt it as the strategic plan for the next 5 years. So very exciting stuff on that front. And as you can see, I am not in Georgia currently. I am in Dallas at the International Economic Development Council's annual conference. A lot of good stuff, a lot of great programming and panels of industry professionals. The Alpharetta brand and name is globally known. I've never really had to explain where Alpharetta is to anybody. As soon as they see my name tag, or I say I'm with the city of Alpharetta, it's a great brand, and I know we all know that, but it's nice to see in action. So having a great conference. Returning back to Georgia tomorrow. Charlotte is actually going to be departing to the state version of this conference tomorrow. That's going to be down in Savannah. So she'll be spending time down there with our state partners and attending a lot of good panels and such as well with the Georgia focus. Last week, our department sponsored the FinTech South Conference that the Technology Association of Georgia hosted down at in downtown Atlanta. And got to see a lot of great Alpharetta companies down there. We are, of course, a huge fintech capital, so it made perfect sense. And Data Sears and some other tech Alpharetta companies were present, as well as some of our bigger employers like Global Payments. So that was a good conference. Got to meet with some of our local folks down there as well. In terms of some of kind of corporate updates, we've gotten a few visits recently from kind of smaller fintech companies with an international focus. Actually, we had a British company tour last month that the state of Georgia brought to us, as well as a Brazilian company, both on kind of the smaller side, but they've heard about the Alpharetta brand and coming from other countries. So it's great to see. And Karen, who I know you'll be hearing from right after I'm done speaking, has been a great facilitator as well, because they've always interested in Tech Alpharetta, and that's a brand that sells itself. We had a grand opening of OneStream. It's a software company that moved their Atlanta headquarters from Buckhead up to Alpharetta over off Kimball Place across from Avalon. They invited several elected officials as well, including the mayor. The mayor was able to say a few words at the ribbon cutting. It's great to see. Continuing that trend, especially that we're seeing post-COVID, of some of the in-town Atlanta companies moving their Atlanta locations up here to Alpharetta, citing quality of life, better walkability actually than a lot of Atlanta, things of that nature. So always great to see, staying busy. And I'll turn it over to Charlotte now to give you an update on some of the downtown DTA initiatives and some of the things she's working on with the Alpha Loop Foundation as well.
Sure. So we've got a couple of things that we're working on. One being that our website, we've housed a interactive commercial real estate tool for the past several years. That technology has been pretty out of date and has required a lot of staff upkeep. So we have switched our vendor, and we're in the process of working with a new vendor to get that tool launched on our website. Once that is, we will have a presentation, but I'm very excited about it. It has an Esri interface, so allows geomapping. That's something that the city uses a lot for its demographics and community information. But it also, we're bringing in data from another data company that will scrape different real estate websites and update all of the commercial listings automatically. So it doesn't require us as staff to go in and update them individually. We're not reliant on realtors to go update in CoStar either. It's going to be something that as soon as they update it on their website, it'll be updated on our website within a week. There's a lot of cool capabilities with that, so we're looking forward to that tool being launched, and we'll do a demonstration for you then. We have had a busy month with the DTA initiative. The Downtown Alpharetta Business Leaders Meeting had a pretty wide attendance. We had some council people come and attend, and it was a really successful meeting. The advisory board is taking more solid shape. We've now had 10 different downtown businesses commit to that advisory board capacity, where they really get into depth workshopping ideas and challenges that they face and coming up with potential solutions for them. It'll also be a great tool in the future for the city to bring plans that focus on downtown to a group of business leaders who will be able to give specific feedback to that in a more in-depth way. There's also a number of events coming up for the DTA. October 5th is that biannual Ladies' Night Out, where they partner with a number of different businesses, and it's sponsored by our ACVB. And They will have drink specials, a number of games, giveaways, and other things like that in the downtown district, getting people out on, I believe, a Tuesday night. On December 2nd, there is going to be a citywide market day that right now is being branded as the Holiday Hop and Shop. We're going to have the ABA's Farmers Market. They're doing that holiday market they do every year. It'll be held in Innovation Academy, so there will be a lot of small vendors and merchants there. Avalon is planning on also having small vendors and merchants along a strip within Avalon. The Lionheart School is sponsoring another special needs group of artists within the community center. And then the Hamilton Hotel will have a dog-themed Christmas market. So there will be lots of different things going on. The ACVB will have Santa out and balloon animals and all sorts of things. And the city will be running shuttles through those 5 different stops. The DTA, the Alpharetta Chamber, will be having their gift wrap shack out in front of the Hamilton to encourage people to buy things from downtown businesses as well as the small artisans and then get them wrapped there for their Christmas gifts. There's also going to be a window decorating contest for the downtown businesses in December, which I think is going to be really exciting in terms of drumming up some collaboration, some competition, and really bringing out the festive spirit. It'll be an online voting, so there will be 5 different categories, and there'll be QR codes that'll take you to the downtown website. You can vote in those different categories for the different windows, and they will announce the winner on December 15th. So it'll be the first 2 weeks we'll be voting, and then they'll get bragging rights for the rest of the season. And then the Sips of the Season promotion, where restaurants can have one holiday special, potentially one alcoholic drink and one non-alcoholic drink, and that it's promoted on the downtown website, and then we link it on the city website. That'll also be happening the 1st through the 17th in December. So lots of things coming up there, and that's exciting with the downtown district. And then the Alpha Loop Foundation, our 2 board members who are on the Alpha Loop Foundation, John Goss and Morgan Smith, are both out today. But the Alpha Loop Foundation has made a lot of progress, and hopefully we can get an update from them within the next 2 weeks. But their website is still being refined, but it is now live. And they will be at the farmers market this Saturday for the first time to help kind of canvass, raise awareness about the foundation and about the Alpha Loop, hand out flyers, and answer questions. They hope that this will be an ongoing thing and to take residents also on guided walks of the Alpha Loop existing pathways. I think that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions for me or Lance on economic development updates?
Anything on Billy Johnson? Like, is there any movement on Billy Johnson?
I'll turn that over to Kathy to answer.
So Bailey Johnson does have a land disturbance permit. They are planning to go back to council to ask if they could rebuild the gym. They found a lot of different issues with it, a lot of problems with that structure. So the gym is one of the more prominent pieces that sit close to Kimmel Bridge. So one of the conditions of zoning said you had to preserve the entire building. What they want to be able to do is to rebuild just that gym portion. So they've met with the Historical Society, and they have them on board. So that's something that you'll see going forward. But they already started some of the utilities, the sewer connections, so they're moving.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Lance and Charlotte. Any other thoughts or questions or comments for them? Well, then, Karen, would you like to give us an update?
Sure. Have a quick update for you all. Good evening. Tech Alpharetta is in our busy season right now. Not only are we planning for next year, but next week is the Venture Atlanta Conference, which is it's the largest venture capital conference in the Southeast that takes place downtown. And we are involved and actually a very small sponsor this year. It gives us access to a tremendous number of investors to continue to develop those relationships so that we can bring them in and introduce them to our startups. So I'll be spending several days in Atlanta next week for that conference. followed just a few days later on October 2nd by our third annual Tech Alpharetta Golf Classic at the Manor on October 2nd, which provides us with tremendous brand exposure, and we've been working to grow that ultimately into a potential fundraiser for Tech Alpharetta as well. Although I must say that the fall field of golf tournaments has become quite crowded in Alpharetta. It seems that there's several going on every week now. But as I said, we're also planning for next year, the golf tournament. We have 25 foursomes lined up, and we're good to go on there. And our incubator continues to flourish. We currently have 52 tech startup members in there. Two most recently joined companies since the last time I reported are an early stage IT software company and an early stage healthcare IT software company. So our numbers have been really strong in there for a number of months, which we're very happy about. In addition to that, as Lance mentioned, we've helped tour and meet with visiting fintech company, and Lance brought by two of the state economic development's new project managers for a tour and discussion last week. So we continue to enjoy good close collaboration with economic development. And just wanted to ask if anybody had any questions.
Thank you once again.
Thank you all.
With that, we've concluded the formal part. Is there anything that anyone would like to get on the agenda for our next meeting?
I've lost track of where we are on potentially doing a tour again. What's going, I know that, I just didn't, I probably have forgotten and I apologize, but is there any potential for that in the near future?
No, thank you for bringing that up. We had, I think, had a preliminary tour date after our first one had been canceled, and then we lost the staff member that generally drives us on tours, and we're a little short-staffed. We now have some more code enforcement members that have joined the team, and hopefully we can convince one of them to participate and to drive the bus for us, because I am afraid to, and Lance doesn't enjoy doing so. But I can send around, when I send around the times for potential meetings, I can send around another poll so that we can determine a time to conduct a tour, because I think that would be great.
Yeah, Sean, I'll echo what Charlotte was saying. Of course, yeah, we definitely want to facilitate with you all a tour. I know it's been a desire of the authority for a bit now, and our apologies on that, as Charlotte said. We have some new team members that I'm sure would be willing to help facilitate this and drive us around. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll make sure we'll get some dates on the calendar in the relative near term.
Maybe we could, on December 2nd, when you're doing the hop and shop, we could just get on the bus and say, look, we're going on a tour. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for being here, and look forward to next time, and thank you very much for being here.
Good night, everybody.